Good morning, everybody. It is 10:05 Wednesday morning. It's a beautiful week. We're going to dig into the market review, see what we got this week. Till the next video on Friday, I'm going to start making three a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays to help navigate the market a little bit better. And then I'm going to try to create like a bot that can interact a little bit so that I can discuss a little bit more of real-time trades and things that I'm doing on a daily basis. All right, cool. So let's dive into it. I've got the backdrop of the market behind me. We'll start with the QQQs as always. So let's just get a quick summary of what happened here. We had this movement up last week. We were at one point almost 7% extended above the 50. By rule, I don't like to ever buy anything, meaning ETF or NASDAQ related, when it's more than 6% above the 50. Usually that's a little extended. That's this line here. And that's usually the time you trim and take a little bit of profits on most of your stocks. When the NASDAQ is down 1%, your growth, momentum swing trades that we're in are usually down 2, 3%. Same thing with the upside. When the NASDAQ's up 1%, usually you're up 2, 3%, or even larger in some cases. So today, yesterday came down, did not hit the 20, bounced up today, holding on to a half a point gain. Still above the 20 and above the 21, which I also use on my trading platform. So I mean, I'm still constructively happy with that movement. Nothing to report back. So let's get a little bit about what's going on in the economy right now. Number one, it appears that we are going to get the end of the government shutdown. So I hear Jeffries and Schumer and a bunch of people are meeting, so we might get some information regarding that. That could potentially help to get some clarity in the way things are going. One of the things that I saw this morning, which was interesting, was ADP released their numbers again for the month of October, and it shows that 42,000 private jobs were added that they reported. That was coming off of last month, saying that there were more private jobs reported added the month before. So that's a positive. Overall, happy with that. Private jobs, that's a sign, a good trajectory. However, let's go into some of the things that are not as much concerning, but just to watch. So one of the most important things is we had an AMD. You know, before we jump into AMD, let's look at Bitcoin real quick. I get a ton of messages every day. Bitcoin made a lower low here and not a good sign for the short term. Certainly not good. From what I mentioned on my last video, the next area of true support is like 92,000. You're below all major moving averages. Made a lower low here. Not good. You need to hope that this holds here. This is not actionable for a trade. If you dollar cost average into Bitcoin, I mean, it really doesn't matter. You know, I buy Bitcoin and I buy BTCI, which I'll just plug that in here real quick. That's something that I own. BTCI is something I dollar into. I don't set stop losses for this because it's a 36% yield a year on a year. I know it pays out on a monthly. Very little erosion, if any at all, and it just trades covered calls on Bitcoin ETFs. So I buy this and I buy regular Bitcoin, and when I see Bitcoin setting up for a trade, I buy IBIT on my brokerage account or I trade calls. Obviously, right now, nope, you would not want to do that. All right, gold. I'm not going to really touch on gold. Gold is in the doghouse right now, so nothing to touch on there. Let's go AMD. Let's start off with AMD because they had, well, yeah, let's start off AMD because they had earnings. So I mentioned to a couple people yesterday in some chats, I sold 30% of all my shares yesterday before the bell. My largest position, hands down, the largest position I've ever held. I've been buying this since back here. So I did pretty good on that. And I think sometimes taking profits is a good thing. In hindsight, clearly not the best move. It's up 1.5%. So I sold it below that. So not the smartest. However, I did buy some calls because I got, I had a good amount of profits that I sold and made. And I said I would be a little distraught if this has an upward move, and I didn't capture that. So I bought 260 calls going out to, or I'm sorry, I think about 255 calls going out to next Friday, and those are still active and they're still running. And I believe I'm in the green. I think this is going up today. You know, it's still above the 20, and it kind of found support in the pre-market. And so I would say this about AMD. AMD's report was absolutely amazing. I read through it in detail, guidance, EPS, sales, talking about the PC recovery, which is amazing, which we really need to touch on is the PC recovery is happening. They talked about their gaming sector, just all the way around, just a very healthy report. Um, Hard not to love this company long term, and I did not sell any of my long term shares, but in my tradable shares, I did. If you're somebody that's a long term investor, you should own this. And I mean, this is not financial advice, this is only for educational purposes. But AMD is a stock that I would say is should be a staple in a long term portfolio. In regards to a trade, I think it's set up right now. It came down to the 20 in pre-market and bounced right off of that. Very constructive. Um, the earnings were great. All a company can do is release great earnings. And usually the signal of a top is when a company puts out great news, but it doesn't receive it well. That's usually the signal of a top. And in that case, it might have happened with Meta. Meta put out pretty good earnings last week and completely downwards. I mean, even look at that 5-day moving average, just boom, down. So if you own a stock like this, which I don't, you got to respect the selling and have stop losses set. I'm a big proponent of always setting your stop losses that are correlating with moving averages, and so that you could protect your profits. Stop losses are imperative to me. I always preach that. I've been preaching that for many of years. But this is an example of a stock that released pretty good earnings. However, um, they did mention that they were spending a very large amount of money and reinvesting in the company, which is good. However, I think Wall Street's concerned that they're not going to get the ROI on all that money that they're spending on ad revenue and all that stuff or ad spend. I don't know. I don't own the company, but I pay attention to it. So that's for that. So, that's one thing to keep in mind. We'll talk a little bit about what we have today. Novo Nordisk reported earnings this morning, and pretty good earnings, and kaboom, down. I have not bought it. I mentioned on my Monday video, I'm going to wait for the stock to carve out a low. Once it carves out a low, and I feel that maybe this could be the double bottom here, we don't know that yet, I'm going to take calls. This is on my watch list. It's not ready yet. Don't jump into it. But I think at some point, this is going to set itself up for a great trade and a great investment long term. So you should be prepared for that and have that on your list. One of the stocks that I mentioned in one of my old videos that I bought as an investment about 2 months ago was Lemonade. And sometimes it's good to be lucky than be good. Up 22% today, all-time high. I've been a fan of this company. I mentioned this maybe a month and a half ago when I got into it. I bought it as more as an investment. I set like a 10% stop loss because I wanted it a little bit more play with it, so to say, and it worked out great. And for the longs that bought this when I bought this, you guys know who you are. Congrats, all-time high. I'm not selling. Overhead supply gone. Clear blue skies. A power gap move like that is something that you cannot ignore. Okay, so now let's jump into stocks because we're 8 minutes in, and I'm trying to make these videos a little bit shorter, as people tell me that they only have the attention span of about 10 minutes. So what am I watching today? Dutch Bros reports today. I mentioned this. I sold some calls last week that were short dated calls, but I read up, so to say. I bought new calls on, I think it was Monday. I bought new calls and I have my shares for the trade, and I'm rolling into earnings after the bell today. Fingers crossed. Usually I'm going to risk off guy. I don't love to play earnings. I just got a hunch. And the hunch is an educated hunch. It's not a gut feeling, but I think the correlation between Keurig buying Pete's Coffee and their valuation, also Starbucks getting absolutely murdered. It is my thesis that Bros does well after hours today. I'm not loaded to the gills. It's not a huge trade for me as I don't do anything and going into earnings huge. But this is a little bit more something out of my character. But I feel good about bros. I own it also in my long-term account, my IRA that I bought since last year. So maybe that's part of the reason why I am playing this a little bit more loose. Okay, let's keep jumping into these things. Let me pause this just 1 second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. Temporary issue I had to deal with. All right, so let's jump back into it. What did I say was setting up? What did I say wasn't setting up? Lily, I mentioned Lily earlier in the week, and I got in on this on Friday. I got up on the power gap move. This is still riding. I think it's extended. So there's two ways to look at this. I think if you let Lily come down to the 5 here, this will set up for a trade. I got in here. Fortunately, I got in at the right time on the earnings gap. Don't be afraid when a stock gaps up on earnings to get into it. Just, when you look at it here where my cursor is, it didn't blow through the high here. I mean, I took it here. I'm not smart enough to take it here, but I waited to the next day, the follow through, took it up bouncing off the 5, and it really accelerated higher. Took it, and I'm in it. I think long term, Lily's going to continue to take market share. I think it's going to $1,000. But in the short term, I think it's a little bit extended. Okay, so Lily, I think setting up for you, put it on your watch list, see if it comes back to this 5 and that you could potentially take this. SanDisk, I mentioned this last week and I admittedly just sold this stock. So I sold it a little bit about an hour, well, no, 30 minutes ago. So this is probably going higher without me. But it's got earnings tomorrow. I was up 11.5%, and this was just a simple fact of me taking profits. I did have half calls, half shares, and earnings tomorrow after the bell. I I'm playing enough. I'm being aggressive enough with some of the other things I'm doing that I felt like 11.5% gain in 4 trading days was sufficient for me. So I'm off. I'll be watching this on earnings tomorrow, knowing my luck. This will blow up and go right through, but I won't have any action. The only thing that I could see potentially happening for me is if the stock opens up a little bit lower tomorrow and gives me an entry at the 5. I might wet my beak, so to say, with a couple option calls. Fortunately, I had profits from what I sold now, so I have a little bit to play with. So I might want to have a little skin in the game, as I do think they're going to have a positive earnings. However, I always want to manage my downside risk, and that's why I sold it. All right, Bloom Energy. I got into this one last week, and I still feel really good about this. Bloom Energy set up nicely. I mean, really just bounced really nice this morning on a technical standpoint. It looks great. Want to see it break over the all-time high, which is like right around 149, $9 away. But I mean, up today 10%. Bloom Energy is just the thing is there's a supply and demand issue in this in the nature of where we're going with AI, uh, data centers, infrastructure. So they need energy, and there's not enough energy. And companies like Bloom, they have a solution to that problem, and they're very properly run companies. And I'm an investor here. My stop loss is a lot wider. It's not the standard 5. So my stop loss is way down here, basically correlating with the 20-day moving average. So needless to say, I'm an investor here more so than a trader. I think this is actionable. Your earnings are behind you. I think you're going to see an all-time high. I think this is good for a trade. I think this is also good for investment. I'm up a little bit over 15% from my entry point, so I feel pretty good about that. So Bloom setting up nicely. Okay. Irene or Iron or whatever the hell you want to call it. Um, nice move today. I mean, listen, I told you guys when I got back in was this day here. Got in. I got stopped out here. Got back in here. So it's basically a wash. I wanted to make sure my entry. And let me touch on that for a second, and hopefully I don't go too fast. Some people have asked me, well, why would you sell here to just get right back in here? Well, because you don't know. A stock cuts your averages, it blows through your stop loss, and you don't know how low it can go. You have to respect the selling, right? So I got out here, it went down another 2 days, right? I managed to avoid that. Well, now, granted, I saw it go back up here, a FOMO guy would have been like, got to get back in. No, you got to make sure it sets up. So on this day, it set up on the converging averages and it gapped up there. I took it. It was here, moved around. It slid here. I was close to my stop, was down here. And then we got this big move here. And I think it's constructive. And now today, again, up 6%. And I like it. Now, with that said, let me take a second to touch on this. This is a company with no earnings and a ton of froth. And I mentioned to multiple people, you want to see froth get taken out of the market. And so what I mean by that is there is a bunch of companies that have no earnings, all speculation, and they've been running. A constructive, healthy market will remove some of these, right? I'm smart enough to know this is good enough for a trade, and I have kind of a trigger point where I want to sell. I am on the green, but I'm going to tell you there's companies like IONQ, which is a quantum computing stock, right? These are going to be the first ones to crack when we know the market's coming down. Look at it already off the high, right? No sales, no nothing to contribute to anything. Rigetti, another one. Just a quantum computing stock. Look, these companies don't have any earnings. They don't have anything. So be careful. You need to manage your risk appropriately. You know, some of you guys are FOMOing into some of these things, and you got to be careful because, you know, the music's going to stop, so to say, or musical chairs is what I want to relate it to. And the companies that are going to go first are the ones that are speculation stocks. And these are going to be the ones to crack. And I would bet any amount of money I'll be shorting these soon enough. Still too early, but I'll be shorting them. So, you know, I would I would err on the side of caution. I'm going to jump into Palantir. So I sold Palantir calls last week on Friday, and I sold 10% of my PLTW shares last Friday. Risk off, right? I thought earnings were on the Monday morning, so I wanted to lighten up. It was a pretty substantial position. Didn't report Monday morning. I got that wrong. It was Monday after the bell. I went into earnings and I talked to a couple people and I said, listen, I'm going to take some risk off here and I'm going to get rid of 30% more of my PLTW shares, which is really the way I trade this. So I sold going into earnings and I kept about a 60% position. Earnings were pretty good, right? Pretty good earnings. The stock absolutely shit the bed the day after, which was yesterday, and then today again, and is shitting the bed. Not literally, but down 3.8%. So to explain this to you, Michael Burry, the guy Big Short, he disclosed a large short on this company, and so because of the large short, I think that drove down the stock. This could be the temporary all-time high. Here's the way you got to play this thing for you guys. I still have a position here. I have a 60% position of PLTW, which essentially is Palantir. But my calls, I got out. I got lucky. I got out of that last week. So here's the thing. Palantir is trading at an absurd valuation. Right. So the theory and thought is because of rate cuts, which are going to happen again. We just had a rate cut. We're going to get another rate cut. Excuse me. We're going to get another rate cut. The theory is that multiples on rate cuts will help expand, not contract smaller businesses and growth stocks and, companies of that nature. However, companies like this are very stretched. Doesn't mean it can't go higher. CrowdStrike is a very good example of a company that is trading at an absurd multiple of market cap. And look at this. And you could go back. I mean, was this August of? Hold on. Let's go back to October of last year. It was $166. So it can happen. My point being is with Palantir, I think you need to see where it closes today. And the reason is that 20 is 185. You're at 183. I'd like to see a close above that. Now, with that said, very important. If I don't see a close above that, I'm going to become a little bit more wary, and I probably will set my stop here, which I didn't set for PLTW, right there at the 50. Below the 50, I'm out. I'm adios. But I'd like to see it catch support here, which I think it could today, and then set us up. So I'm a smaller position PLTW, but I would like to expand that position in the event that we could get and recover this. Okay. All right, almost 20 minutes in, and I am almost done, guys. I think we covered a good amount of stuff. I will touch on Open Door real quick. It reports tomorrow, after the bell, below all the averages. On a technical standpoint, you shouldn't be buying this. On a fundamental standpoint, maybe you should be buying it. Again, not financial advice, um, just for educational purposes. The reason I'm going to tell you is I listened to the new CEO's interview yesterday, which I shared with a bunch of people. And, you know, man, his this guy is he knows how to right the ship. He's done he has proven concept with Shopify. He's done a great job, and I think he's going to get it right. I think the rate cuts are going to help. I think the expansion, like I talked about the rate cuts, not just in the aspect of real estate, but I think there's some rumors going around that they're going to merge with some fintech companies on how to receive certain transactions. I know they mentioned Bitcoin they're going to take. I think this is just going to be a recovery story like Carvana. I think this is a good company, and I am a believer in the turnaround story. So take that for what it's worth. And then finally, I'm going to give you a play that I'm looking at this week, which I am ready to move on it when I can get my entry. As they say, fools rush in. This is a biotech stock. I want to see it recover right above the 20, a recovery above the 20, and I'm going to buy this. I absolutely love this action. This is a Darvis box type of look, which for those of you who know, the Darvis box is what's in the box, out the box, and once it moves out, it usually goes. I like this down 2.5% today. I want to see it carve out a low and above 1570 would be my trigger point. So above that is a all engines go, so to say. So that is on my list for probably today. I probably will take as a trade. So in any case, navigate the market. I'll be back on Wednesday. I didn't touch on Amazon, but that's still actionable if you guys find interest in that. Watch your averages. Watch to see if these politicians could get their shit in order. These putzes, they're doing their thing, trying to get the government shutdown to end. Hopefully that does happen, and we start getting some clarity in which direction we're going. And congratulations to the people that won in the election yesterday, whoever those people are. Yeah. Uh, I won't touch on that. All right, guys, have a great week. I'll be back Friday. Trade appropriately. Dutch Bros earnings after hours. Manage your risk. Set your stops. Be intelligent. Don't act like a putz.